started on week 4. And looking ahead, there are a couple of things that we're kind of adding to the mix. One of the things we're doing is we're talking a lot about texture this week and working with it. Texture in the sense that what you're seeing out there and how you're trying to make it look on a piece of paper. In other words, there's an actual texture, something you can feel, and there's a visual texture, something that just looks like something you can feel. I know it's a little tricky, but I think you'll figure it out once you get started in these first assignments. Anyway, go through the week, go through these different sections of the sheets of the readings over there, and make sure that it makes clear to you. There's some wonderful drawings like this particular one right here where you can get an idea of how that particular texture ought to appear. Nice visual textures here. You see how shiny that apple is, and then it looks like a tomato actually, doesn't it, with a little star up there. And a little bit about the wood texture here and the wood texture here, and then you even get a feeling here for the texture on that. Now that's certainly a visual texture that comes from us looking at an actual texture. Be careful in understanding the difference between texture and pattern. Let me see if we can talk a little bit about some of this. You want to group your drawing as you're setting up your textures. Make sure you've got some contrast too, and this will be something that we do a little bit later on, not immediately. On this particular thing, the drawing, and I'm just going through the drawings here, show you, and this is your example under rendering textures. It's going to talk to you a little bit about how to render. Make sure you've got a nice light source, and you see the light source is the same for all of those as you start to do your drawing, and this gives you an example of how that drawing goes. I'm going to speed down here to the end, and you can see what a nice kind of shadow is doing and how that modulation from the darker shading is beginning to give you some real drama and sense and all that. So pay attention to that. Contrast of textures, something else, and this is sort of loading up while we're getting to the contrast of different textures. It's very important when you approach a texture. Look here how you have the sharp, shiny kind of niceness that's going with the chrome compared to the roughness. Now, certainly this is about pattern, but it's more than pattern. It's that modulation in here, the gradual change from that light line that's getting the light from here to the kind of medium areas and then up here to the darker. That's a gradual thing. So you get the feeling of that little bit of rounded edges on the paper. And on the chrome, it's totally different. You get a very striking hard edge that shows you the difference in the texture. So very important that you see these textural changes as you go through some of these. Reflections are tricky. When you start looking at reflections, you have to understand exactly that when you're doing, let's say, a reflection on china, you have that nice gradual and then a sharp abruptness on that reflective metal. Again, there's nothing gradual at all, very abrupt kinds of changes as you see that. Look at that edge that happens there, very hard edge kind of things. Go through all of these on your readings and then get ready for the first assignment. Now the first assignment is asking that you do something kind of interesting, that you come up with some swatches. Now here's one of the swatches, and this is a wood texture. This is a 4 by 4 inch. Don't draw the whole thing. Look at it. Make this work. And friends, the way you make this work is you set up your light source, okay? You see a nice light source reflection here, which gives you a smoothness on that. I've got to tell you that I've seen some really great ones. These are not my favorite here in the examples, but over here, that light source, you have more of a sense about the rough texture here. I would, if I were you, go get a piece of wood outside, make sure you do contrasts, and maybe get a reflective surface like bowl or marble or something like that. Stay away from two things that become pretty much the same thing, like the wood things here. I would definitely stay away from that, okay? That's the first one. And in addition to that, make sure your light source is set up. These are two 4 by 4 inch things. And then you've got 2 discussion questions. Don't forget that. That's all part of that first assignment. The second assignment is, again, a little bit about texture, but this time they want you to go in and find a large scale object. Now the one you're given here is kind of a media center over here. And they want you to show two sides. One side going off to this to the left and the other one going off to the right. You're sitting right in front of that corner area and they want you to render it thinking a little bit about the texture, mostly about that perspective. Now this perspective is not about a formal perspective drawing, but you should have a good feeling for that perspective. You should have a good feeling about how those edges get smaller as they recede. So if you need to go back and review perspective, do so, please. Anyway, you're setting up a large piece of furniture somehow and trying to give us that angle with that wonderful kind of modulated shading that you're getting to the point of doing. And then the third assignment wants you to go to an environment. Now this could be a little bit tricky, especially since it's kind of cold and dark, but you can go inside or outside. Now this is not finished. This is the inside. Let me show you how that kind of develops. Let me show you. This is another kind of one that you can see how that's an interior. Interior has the advantage of a controlled situation, but we want the environment, and we want the environment to show us maybe a corner back there, or certainly some foreground. You've got a door, background. You want everything to be in perspective. You want nice tonal variations. For those of you in residential planning, this is a must. So pull out all the stops and work on this. This is an outside, whoops, I didn't mean for that to go away like it did. Let's see if I can get back to where I was. This is an outside area that we're trying to show you or ask you if you would prefer to be outside. And if you're in a part of the country and have a beautiful day, by all means, you can see gradually, first of all, just sketching it in, almost a gesture drawing, then gradually putting in some of the tones on the second stage, adding more tones. And this is the way I'd like for you to see your drawings, a little more detail, and at the end here, you have a nice sense of background, foreground, middle ground. So both of those hopefully will give you some kind of an idea whether you want to do an inside or an outside. And then I know the one you're really looking forward to this week, you're going to work on those crits again. I hope you go back and review what crits are about. I think you're coming along really well on your crits. You all kind of have the knack of saying something very positive and at the same time pointing directions that will make this individual get very strong. Please be aware that you have to do 2-1 or 2 ones. You have to do 2 for each crit. For assignment 2, we want you to do 2. For assignment 3, we want you to do 2. And make sure they're about 2 paragraphs in length. So all of that, this is week 4. Look forward to looking at your work. Carry on. You're over halfway through. Good for you.